I asked you for your hottest takes on the Dutch Grand Prix over on the community tab, and you guys really didn't hold back. Let's get started. First one from Mallory E. McLaren on our Red Bull race winner. Max is on a life cheat code. 9 wins in a row, 11 wins so far this season. He's just on a completely different level right now. Okay, he messed up at the beginning, got the strategy a little bit wrong, and then just sived through the field on the intermediate tyres. No one was anywhere near his pace this weekend in the Netherlands. He deserved to match Vettel's win streak, and I can't see anybody getting anywhere close to him in Monza, so it's going to be 10 wins in a row. He's going to have another record to his name. He's going to break even more records later on in this season. At this point, we might as well just give him the title now, ask him to stay at home for a little bit, and actually enjoy everybody else racing. The second hot take from Boy Smudger, Gasly driver of the day. Now, Fernando Alonso did get the nod for driver of the day. He got 20.9% of the vote. Albon was then second, Verstappen third, and Gasly was in fourth place with 9.1% of the overall vote come Sunday. And the Alpine looked like it was the 7th fastest car this weekend. I think realistically, you've got the Red Bull, Ferrari, Aston Martin, Mercedes, McLaren, and the Williams that was quicker than the Alpine car. So the fact that Pierre Gasly pitted on the first lap perfectly, got himself towards the front, and then held on to that third place finish was absolutely incredible to see. He got the podium as well to match his teammate. Obviously, Esteban Ocon got that podium in Monaco. Now Gasly has a podium to his name as well. And the sprint race in Spa. I've been very, very impressed with Gasly so far this season. I think he's had his ups and downs, but I would have definitely given him driver of the day from this weekend. Boneless Watermelon 420, Pierre's podium was supposed to be Alex's had the team not messed up the strategy. The battle for the podium should have been one of the most interesting battles all season on Sunday. We had Norris in second, Russell, Albon, Alonso, Sainz, Perez. Like those 6 cars all should have been in the mix for that second and third place behind Max Verstappen. And I was really looking forward to how that battle between those 6 cars would go. Like 6 different teams right in there, all of them in for a chance at the podium. And then the rain kind of ruined that because everybody mixed up. Loads of people got the strategy wrong. Norris, I think, was the biggest loser. I think if there was a guaranteed person who was going to get on the podium, I'd have gone for Lando Norris. He just looked really quick this weekend. Albon definitely had a shot at a podium. But when you're looking at Russell, Alonso, and Perez in there as well, whether or not the Williams would have been able to hold on to that podium position, I'm not so sure. But he definitely was in for a fight. Sally Miller 1533, Fernando Alonso proves once again that some old dogs know all the tricks and how to use them. Fernando Alonso just showed once again he is one of the best drivers on the grid right now. He just looks so comfortable in that Aston Martin car. I love this take and I completely agree with it. Whilst everyone else seemed to be all over the place, there was mechanics running around, there were drivers not sure of which tyre to be on and when. Fernando Alonso seemed cool, calm, collected. Like, I talked about that 6 behind Max Verstappen. Norris, Russell, Albon all got it wrong, and he got it spot on. The experience he has, and also just the team. The fact that the team have so much faith in him. When Fernando Alonso made that call, the team are like, yep, we're going to go with what you want to go with. You're in the car. You understand the grip level of the car. Let's go with what you want. And the fact that the Aston Martin was upgraded this weekend as well looked a little bit better. It was nowhere near the second fastest car though. Fernando Alonso made that second place look really easy. Alvarori 9308, Perez wasn't that terrible. He was really far off Max Verstappen in the wets, but in the dry, his lap times were only a 10th off. I think you're being very kind to Sergio Perez with this hot take, if I'm honest with you. He didn't qualify overly well once again, which has just been a thing for Sergio Perez this season. He did spin off into the wall, causing him to drop back behind Fernando Alonso, and then he also sped in the pit lane. So as much as, you know, things didn't go his way, and obviously it would have been much easier. I think on a dry track, Sergio Perez would have been right up there and fighting for the podium positions really easily. The wets, the intermediates weren't quite up to his level. He did then drop behind Gasly and miss out on the podium because of a mistake that he made. So I think overall, it's a bad weekend for Sergio Perez. I'm also going to chuck in one of my hot takes. Ferrari are the worst run team on the grid. Every weekend at this point, there is something that goes wrong for the Ferrari team, and it just happens over and over again. And it's always communication, it's strategy, tyres, traffic. They never seem to get those three things right. And Leclerc, during qualifying on the radio, it was only Q1 and he was already frustrated with the team for letting him out in the wrong place and getting loads of traffic on his fast laps. And then he bins his car in Q3 as well, picks up some damage going through the gravel when it comes to the race, comes in for a stop. There are no tyres there for him. I know that he called it really, really late, but a lot of drivers called it really, really late, and they still had intermediates there ready to go. The Ferrari team just seemed completely shocked that he would want some intermediate tyres, even though it was raining. It was just so strange to watch. And at one point, we had Charles Leclerc battling Liam Lawson for P15, and the fact that that happened is just absolutely insane to me. I think we do have to hand it to them. Sainz did okay. Sainz did actually really well with a really bad Ferrari package this weekend. But the fact that Charles Leclerc had such a bad weekend again, and the fact that communication between the team and the drivers again was just horrible throughout the weekend, is a really bad weekend for Ferrari. Polish Eddie 4698, Mercedes screwed George over in order for Hamilton not to look so bad. This is an incredibly hot take. If you think they actually put aside George Russell's race, who was probably in for a podium position just to make Lewis Hamilton not look too bad, I'm not so sure I can go along with that storyline, but I do think it was one of the worst weekends that we've had for Mercedes in a really long time. Like, the fact that they are second in the Constructors' Championship just goes to show that even when they're not the second fastest car, they still find the right strategy, the right tires, the right time, and they get the best out of their car every single weekend. This weekend, that was not the case. Like, George qualified well, but leaving him out was a dreadful decision, and he himself said that he was projected for a podium. Not stopping for intermediates until lap 4 proved to be like the worst of both strategies. He should have either stayed out really long like Alex Albon did, or come in instantaneously for those intermediate tyres, and he just did the thing in the middle that you should never really do in Formula 1. I think you've got to have conviction when you go for strategy in Formula 1. And then obviously he picked up a puncture as well towards the end of the race with that battle with Lando Norris. Was that his fault? Wasn't it his fault? You can kind of go both ways with it. It felt like a little bit of a racing incident between the two of them. But George messed up in the race where Lewis Hamilton didn't, I think, is the main difference between the two this weekend. Lewis Hamilton messed up qualifying, don't get me wrong. Like, he went way too early on those intermediate tyres and burned them out in the traffic before he could go on to his final flying lap. He kind of went for his flying lap the lap before everybody else and therefore lost out massively. But he put it back together in the race. And I think that's where you have Lewis Hamilton's experience. It's similar to what I said with Fernando Alonso. The fact that he was just able to get the most out of the car during those tricky conditions and didn't make too much of a mistake of the race. Boneless Watermelon 420, again, it's testament to Williams' progress that people are disappointed about their P8 result, and that is an absolutely great point. Albon and the team have made Williams look really competitive this season. Earlier in the season, I'd have said that their car was very track dependent, their car was very defensively sound, like Alex Albon was really good at keeping drivers behind, but never really had anything going forwards. The development of that car over the course of the season, though, means that it's now just a really good all-rounder car and often finds itself in the mix, especially with Alex Albon for those points positions, which are really competitive this year. Like, the Dutch track should have been horrible for Williams. I think Alex Albon said to George Russell that he thought this weekend was going to be horrible in the Williams car, and actually they turned up and they were maybe third or fourth fastest throughout lots of different sessions over the course of the weekend. And the fact that, considering 2 years ago where the Williams team were, and the fact that they haven't got the funding, I know you can make parallels to Aston Martin, but Aston Martin have chunked money in ridiculously. Williams just don't have that financial backing in the same way, but they look really competitive. Not at the level of Aston Martin. They're not quite there with the Red Bulls or Mercedes cars yet either, but the fact that Williams are fighting for points whilst teams like Alfa Romeo and Haas and AlphaTauri are really far down the pecking order is very, very impressive. To add to the Williams chat, I'm going to throw in a second hot take of my own. I'm going to say that Logan Sargent was worse than Nicholas Latifi would have been this weekend. I know that he got through to Q3, to preface everything that I'm going to say, in some tricky conditions, but it was also the wet and intermediate conditions that Nicholas Latifi used to thrive in as well. And also, when he goes into Q3 for that first time, he then goes off the dry line, spins into the barriers. The team rushed to get the car back together again. And he smashes the car in the race too really early on when there could have been some points on the cards for the Williams team, especially considering how quick Alex Albon was and how good Alex Albon looked. They could have gone for two different strategies. Maybe Logan Sargent would have got the better of the strategies and would have actually been ahead of Alex Albon in the race. So the fact that Logan Sargent threw away what could have been a really solid weekend and continues to look like the rookie of the grid, even though we've got the likes of Oscar Piastri and Liam Lawson on the grid as well this weekend. And I think Liam Lawson was probably better than Logan Sargent. Sally Miller 1533, Red Bull treats Sergio Perez like a second-class citizen, and it's awful to see. I know that the undercut from Max Verstappen was a little awkward to watch and very difficult to hear over the radio. Like, the fact that Sergio Perez completely was blindsided by Max Verstappen going onto the soft tyre whilst he was still stuck on the intermediate. But at the same time, Christian Horner does defend Sergio Perez and his underperformances quite a lot of the time. It's just unfortunate that whenever the Red Bull car is upgraded, it steers more and more towards Max Verstappen and steers further and further away from Sergio Perez. Like, he's talked about himself really struggling with the balance of the Red Bull car and finding the limit of that car. And I think that's why he underperforms in qualifying so much, because a lot of the time he's been really competitive in the races. It's the qualifying, finding that limit of that Red Bull car that he just can't seem to do right now. And I do feel sorry for Sergio Perez that he's living in a Max Verstappen world. And my final hot take, I'm going to say that Liam Lawson has shown that he could be in Formula One. The 2 days that he had in the car were the worst 2 days imaginable. He was on the wet tyre, the intermediate tyre. It was drying conditions. Then it was back to the wet tyre, back to the intermediate tyre. Like, they threw absolutely everything at him. And he's not driven a Formula One car in anything like those conditions before on a very, very difficult track that is Zandvoort. Like, Zandvoort is not one of those tracks you can just jump in and perform. You have to be right on the level with it. And okay, he wasn't incredibly quick in qualifying, but he never was going to be with the conditions like they were. And the fact that in the race, you know, we saw Sargent spin out twice. We saw Joe in the barrier. We saw Sergio Perez connect with the barrier as well. Okay, he didn't put the car out. We saw loads of drivers going through the gravel multiple times, and he was just really cool, calm, and collected. And next week in Monza, I'm hoping that he really gets an opportunity to show what he can do, because Monza is a much easier track, and I think Liam Lawson is going to do really well. Those certainly were some spicy takes after the Netherlands Grand Prix, and if you're looking for more spicy takes, I made this video here which goes through the 2024 driver lineups and who I think is going to be on the grid come the start of the 2024 season. So click that link, and I'll see you over there.